Hey everyone, and welcome to a special audio-only episode of Table Talk. I'm your host Tony Tasty, and this is the first entry in a new Euchre 101 style mini-series where we're going to start from the ground up and tackle individual topics that you can build on and add to your toolbox each week. Now, before we get into those topics like common mistakes, positional strength, and what makes a callable hand, I want to take a minute and explore what it means to study euchre strategy in general with my good friend and fellow enthusiast, Mittens Goes Nuclear. Welcome aboard, Mittens.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, in the board gaming community, there's this term called a lifestyle game. Have you heard this before?
I have not. That's new to me.
So, it generally refers to older games that have stood the test of time and have proven to be deep and complex enough to warrant a lifetime of study. Games like Go,
Okay.
yeah. So games like Go and chess, I think, are two of the bigger ones. Uh,
Mhm.
but I'd contend that euchre, despite being somewhat of a regional game, belongs firmly in this category of lifestyle games. What do you think? Is there
Yeah,
enough of a game here to study over a long period of time?
I think so. I think it falls into that. Yeah, the way I always refer to those games is easy to learn, difficult to master, and it is because of the depth of it that allows for that much study. And I think it's the kind of thing where the more you learn about the game and the better you get at it, the more you realize you don't know very much about it.
It's
And
definitely a hidden
I
depth
think
for sure.
yeah, tons of stuff just comes up constantly in hands that I'm playing that where I think like I don't know what to do in this spot. I don't know what's better. And so sort of there's always that opportunity to learn once you have like a depth of understanding of a game to begin with. Um, and yeah, and I think, euchre, I think it can sort of look um, in a sort of illusionary way that like it wouldn't be on the same plane as some of those other games because you have the greatest chess player in the world. They're never going to lose a game to someone. Magnus Carlsen isn't going to lose a game to your average Joe or even someone who's studied it for a while, but isn't at that level. Euchre is a game where you can lose because of because of how high the variance is, which I think actually makes the minutia of the game even more important. But yeah, I do think it's more of sort of a poker kind of style that you'd have to play it as you're looking for the best possible plays over a long period of time, and you have to sort of ignore um, random variance and stretches where stuff that you're doing isn't working against people who might not be as good as you. And dealing with that emotionally, I think, is a challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point. I guess euchre isn't much like Go or chess because those are um, no randomness in those games. They're all just you making your moves versus the other people making their moves. So there is an element of randomness to the deal in euchre and the cards you get. Sometimes those will determine games. Um, but I think the important thing to consider is that it's a game you're going to play a lot over a long period of time. It's something that's
Sure.
taught as like a tradition, by family members, and it's kind of a yeah, just a traditional style game that is just going to be with you forever. You're going to play with people of all different ages from maybe not all different places because like I said it's kind of limited to the Midwest for the most part, but those transplants will pick it up and take it with them and teach other people. Speaking of, how did you
Yeah,
learn?
absolutely. And I do. How did I learn?
Yeah.
I uh, I I mean, I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Okay.
I grew up playing the game. My parents probably taught me when I was 5 or 6 years old.
So you're in the region.
And yeah, just sorry.
You're in the region that you would be born into
Yes,
it. Yeah.
yes, yes. I'm right in there. And yeah, my parents are euchre players, and they would have like euchre nights and like go play when I was growing up in school, they'd go play with other parents and have their like monthly euchre night and that sort of thing. So like it was always like around, and I love all sorts of games to begin with. So it was sort of an easy thing to start, getting into. But yeah, I went to a sort of alternative school where they also had these things called focus studies, where you could pick like a subject to learn for like an hour or two a day for 2 weeks. And one of the teachers always ran a focus study on euchre, where he'd teach some of the stuff at the beginning of it, and then you'd have like a big euchre tournament during it. And yeah, it's always been there, and sort of is definitely a part of the regional culture. Like all my friends play, and yeah, like it's a part of growing up in this area. It just feels like a part of everything. Everybody should know how to play, and everyone who doesn't know how to play is ashamed when they tell you.
Right. That's really interesting though that you were given a glimpse early into the hidden depth of euchre in school. That's a cool thing that not a lot of people, not a lot of other people, I don't think would have experienced. Most of the people that I play with locally in live games, um, don't really see the game that way. They think of it as all luck and it's just a game to play while you're drinking and something to do with your hands, and
Yep.
you play the
And it can
cards
be
and you.
it can be all those things.
Sure, yeah, it could
It
absolutely be a
can.
casual game. Yeah.
I think that's a big part of the euchre draw for a lot of people, just that play casually, is that you're just playing while you're having fun with some buddies, and it's you can do a little shit talking and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's sort of something that you can always just do if everybody knows how to play and have a good time with, regardless of you don't have to be super analytical and in depth about it when you're playing with your friends, to enjoy it.
Speaking of shit talking, how much shit talking can you do as a quote unquote skilled euchre player? You're obviously very good at the game, on the leaderboard in euchre 3D with 77,000 players. Um, do you how much better do you feel that you are than the average person? Can you peel off more games than I guess I don't even know how to quantify it. What how much win percent can you eke out by studying the game versus not?
um I think, I don't know, like playing against a just like a very casual person that just plays like once a month at their euchre night or whatever, and can be very good in those euchre nights. I think over a long period of time, like, I don't know, I've studied the game a lot. I think I could win 70% of
Nice.
games against someone that like knows what they're doing but hasn't like studied it any further than that. Um, but it's I'm not totally sure, and like you're also at the mercy of partially whoever you're playing with, and yeah, like those kinds of games. It's like I wouldn't be doing much shit talk.
Right, right.
But with my buddies, I certainly will. I've had a couple instances in my life where I've taken it a little too far without realizing it, and had someone say something that sort of made me step back and be like, "Oh, I guess we're not all having fun here in the way that I thought." But
That's actually how
but
I found the subreddit and really started going deep on euchre strategy. I was a casual player for up until a couple
mhm.
of years ago, and I lost my mind at a buddy of mine that led Trump to me when I called from third seat with a admittedly shoddy hand, and I couldn't believe he did
I
that.
hope you've since apologized.
Oh, I apologize to him every year on the anniversary. I tell him, dude, you were right, I was wrong, and you made me a better euchre player, and Reddit made me a better euchre player because I brought that scenario to them, thinking I was in the right, and everybody told me I was wrong. And I was like, oh my god, it upended my world and showed me uh, a different way of thinking about the game, and really made me fall back in love with it. I was on the verge of just hating euchre because you get in those slumps where you get nothing but shit cards for a long period of
Yep.
time, and everyone's got to deal with those. And it can be easy to just say, screw this stupid luck based game. I don't have any agency here. But that's just not true, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, you have a lot more than you think, and yeah, like I was a very strong. I was like a good euchre player before stumbling across the Reddit. But no, I remember the first time that I was playing on 3D and somebody donated. My partner donated, and like I was like, "What the fuck is that?" There's no way that that is a statistically positive play. And then yeah, I went on thinking that for a couple months, and then I found the Reddit and I started like looking into the deeper parts of the game. And yeah, the stuff that you take for granted that you think is correct because of X, Y, and Z isn't, or only is in certain scenarios. And I mean that's the kind of stuff that makes the game so much fun, and allows you to dive so deeply into it because real little things that go on during a hand can completely change what the better lead is, or to throw off or not. And being able to pay attention to those and differentiate the times where you need to do something versus not, makes it interesting and dynamic, and keeps you on your toes.
And donating for the uninitiated is when you call something up when you think the opponent is going to go alone and get four. To prevent them from getting four, you're still going to get euchred, so they're going to get two, but you're saving yourself 2 points. And that strategy alone means that there's no such thing as a hand you can't call. Um, so every hand is callable in euchre. You just need the right reason, the right scenario, the right score, and
Hmm.
yeah, any mix of cards can do the trick.
Absolutely. Next is one of the things too, where it's like, calling the same color when the opponent's turned down red, and you should call red then because, the opponents are less likely to be holding red jacks. It's like that was uh
That
that changed the entire way I viewed the game and called
that
the
that
second
is
I found that out.
that is the crucial concept that I think a lot of the laymen don't understand about the game, and that concept alone opens up your calling range so much. It's I think that's really the next level, and that's what we want to try and teach people on this show. Um,
Absolutely.
what do what do your friends and family say when you tell them you're into competitive euchre?
I'm probably I mean, nobody's as into it as I am. They tolerate it, which is nice of them. Um, and me talking about it. But yeah, and I will say I can certainly be a little annoying, especially with my friends. Less so my family, but if I'm playing games with my friends, I'm talking a lot of shit. And so yes, I can certainly um, get on their nerves a little bit in a fun way. But
I'll bet
yeah,
they
for the
always
most
ask you
part,
what the right play is, though, right?
occasionally, I will offer it sometimes, even when it might not be as welcome. But
You learn to find that
yeah, I
balance.
mean, right, and it's never about showing that I know more than them, but it's about showing like the depth of the game and the stuff that you can do, and presenting that to someone who you're playing with that doesn't have the same, that hasn't like studied it in the same way is you can I think you can get them to look at things differently, and I think that's something that's usually appreciated within playing and sort of talking about the deeper strategies behind certain plays. um but yeah, I mean, they for the most part they all they all tolerate me.
Got to leave that trail of breadcrumbs to lead them right to the Reddit and get them hooked like we are.
Oh yeah, no, I push them in that direction.
So on that note, you know, there are people that think the game's all luck and it's all about the cards that you get. And what do you have to say about that?
Well, I'll say first that there was a time where I definitely thought along those lines, where it was like, okay, once I've basically developed my strategy and like learned the game, and now I think like, I am at the mercy of the cards, and you always are, to often a larger extent than you'd like in euchre. Um, but I remember there was somebody posted a story on Reddit about a stats teacher. I don't know, a couple of years ago, I think they posted it, but it was basically like a stats teacher at the start of every semester would have like um, a full whatever they're called, college hall with 200 kids. Um, and at the beginning, they'd have one kid come up, one student come up, and then flip a coin 20 times. And then they would have everybody in the class write down a random sequence of heads and tails, what they thought the coin would do. And basically, and then they'd have the person who actually flipped the coin write down what actually happens. And then they'd shuffle all of the papers together, and the professor would find the um, the one that the student actually flipped the coin on. You would do it by looking for the longest sequence of like either heads or tails in a row, because people look at it and people think that like a 50-50 variance is going to be pretty much, they might have like one or two heads in a row and then a tails, but that's not really how it works. It's like you get really long strings of both.
Yeah.
um and I don't know, that story like was really really interesting, especially in the way that like we sort of have a lot of cognitive sort of distorted thinking and biases about like how how the cards work. Like I'm really unlucky in euchre or whatever, rigged, you know all that kind of thinking, um, and how like we're sort of we want there to be a reason for something, and so we search for it, and if it's not there, we make it up.
Right. And then there's
And
the gambler's
really,
fallacy too. You think you're due for something because you've had
exactly,
a stretch, but you could be in the middle
yeah,
of a really long bad streak. Then
yep.
you're not gonna
Confirmation
come.
bias works great too. It's
Right.
it's all of that stuff, and like um and yeah, and to a large extent, it's like euchre, if you're playing with people who are similar in skill to you, like it is going to look pretty close to 50-50. But there are also so many little things that like you look back in a game and think, man, if I had done that differently, like if I had made a call there, or if I hadn't made a call there, and sometimes it would be the right call or pass that you would have done, and it would have just worked out in that specific scenario. But there are just so many decisions within a euchre game that determine the outcome. And the game that's only played up to 10 points, that variance and like those decisions matter a lot more. And there can be a lot of 3-point swings, particularly like if you're going to get euchred versus getting 1 point, or if you're going to euchre the other team versus them getting 1 point. It's like that is a massive point in the game. And I don't know, learning and like getting learning and finding the best strategies and utilizing them, and trying to sort of adjust based on what's been played. And you also have these sort of improvisational factors of it, just because there's so many different ways cards can be played. But like that is the exciting part, um,
And it's
to
so
me.
important. It's so important to focus on the macro of it all and think about it as a long-term game. It's not just this 10-point game. It's you're going to keep playing this game. You're going to play thousands of 10-point games, and you really have to examine your decision making process and make sure it's sound. One of the biggest barriers that you'll hit as a competitive player is being results oriented in your thinking and letting bad outcomes influence your decision making.
Hmm.
But in games with random elements, you can make the right call and still lose. But it's incredibly important to look critically at the thought process leading to those calls, regardless of how they turned out, and build your strategy that way over time.
Right. Being and yeah, sort of, going off that, being process oriented is such a massive advantage in the way that you approach the game. Because yeah, everybody like we all hate the bad results. And it's just so, it's natural to be results oriented. You're looking for a result, you play a certain way for a specific result. Um, and sort of shifting that approach into, okay, you're playing for a process like that is ultimately going to yield the result, but the result isn't actually the important part. It's the part where you do have agency in it, and get to make those decisions and improve. And the result is arbitrary, in a lot of cases. And yeah, like it's not a natural way to think about something. Um, but it's really advantageous, and separating the emotional aspects of it, and if you feel yourself like going on tilt a little or something, like being able to step away, before coming back, like that is going to serve you really well in the long run.
And for people like us who do examine that process, we're super fortunate to have Euchre 3D and the ranked play feature so that you can kind of benchmark yourself as you learn and change your strategy to try and climb the ladder. Do you think that's a reasonable and valid benchmark for improvement, ranking up?
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly, I think people like games more when there's, and this could also be like a rather capitalistic sort of, a result of sort of capitalistic thinking. But yeah, like I think it's nice to be able to turn anything into a game, even if it's not a game. But like if you get points for something, you want to play it more. And
Number
yeah,
go up.
like it's a competitive thing, and you want to have the higher rating. I think it's an imperfect system still. The elo system, it's hard to adjust and account for the amount of variance that a game like euchre has. Um, but I think it's it is something to. I think you see, tendencies in higher rated players generally. Um, I think one of the best things to sort of strive for is staying at a certain rating, or like between a certain range. Um, I think that's something that is probably a little more reasonable than like trying to achieve like a certain, like one specific rating or something like that. I think that can be helpful for any individual, um, who sort of has that as a goal. But then they have to be focused on the process, of what it takes to do that. And but yeah, I think looking at like a certain rating range, I think is might be a little more helpful in general, so that way you also don't feel as bad when you hit a stretch of lousy cards,
Right.
and go down and are away from the one rating point that you're looking for. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's as good as we got in our community, and I think it's good enough. It serves its purpose, but you definitely, it's a grind. You have to be, like, if you want to be like a top rated player, like, and do it consistently and continue to play once you already are, like, you have to play a lot of games. You have to play a lot of games really well, and be really consistent. But even above that, it's like you have to play and play and play and play. Um, and
There's
be
definitely
looking
an
for those
element of
things.
being in the groove and having that muscle memory and the reflex. Uh, King Lenny, another highly rated player, does a really cool practice technique where he'll just play single player games against the bots to warm up before he even goes into rated, and
Mhm.
he'll play a little game with himself where he has to call it in round two no matter what,
Yeah.
just to reinforce the kind of hands you can get away with and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a really cool strategy and way to warm up. I've never warmed up doing that, but like that's I really like the idea.
Well, there you go. Well, I'm looking forward to diving into these other topics and giving people some more tools to help them up their game. Anything else you want to say before we close out?
Um no, I don't think so. Thanks for having me, Tony. I appreciate it. I love talking about euchre. It's a ton of fun just to I don't know, share my thoughts on a game that I love and have studied a lot and like hear other people's because yeah, it's like, there's a lot to learn regardless of how good you are or how good you think you are. And no, I think it's always positive talking about this sort of thing.
Agreed. All right. Well, that's all we got for today. Next week, I think we're going to cover most common mistakes. So look forward to that. Take care, sir.
See you, Tony. Thank you.